You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World on Hinckley Community Radio, a non-profit podcast radio station. Tonight's episode is about the history of Project Blue Book. So over to you, Mark.
Project Blue Book was a code name that was given to the systematic study of unidentified flying objects, or UFOs as more commonly called, by the United States Air Force from March 1952 until its termination on the 17th of December 1969. The project was headquartered by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. It was initially directed by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt and followed projects of a similar nature, such as Project Sign, which was established in 1947, and Project Grudge, established in 1948. Project Blue Book had two main goals. The first goal was to determine whether UFOs were a threat to national security, and the second to scientifically analyse any UFO-related data. By the time Project Blue Book ended, it had collected over 12,618 UFO reports and had concluded that most of them were either misidentifications of a natural phenomena or some sort of conventional aircraft. However, 701 of those cases reported were classified as unexplained, even after very stringent analysis. These 701 UFO reports were then archived and kept for posterity, but are now available to us all under the Freedom of Information Act. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in again and taking the time away from your normal day to listen to something that isn't normal. Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a podcaster and a psychic medium who likes nothing more than to meditate to a thunderstorm. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about the history of Project Blue Book. This week's necessary disclaimer: all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, is probably the only reason why I haven't been abducted by the Greys. Anyway, let's get back to the story. On the 24th of June 1947, one man named Kenneth Arnold, who was an American aviator, businessman and politician, claimed that he saw a string of 9 shiny unidentified flying objects flying past Mount Rainier at speeds that he estimated were at a minimum of at least 1,200 miles an hour. This was the first post-World War II sighting in the United States of America that garnered nationwide news coverage and is credited with being the first of the modern era of UFO sightings, including numerous other reported sightings over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Arnold's description of the objects also led to the press quickly coining the phrase flying saucer and flying disc as popular descriptive terms for UFOs. After his sighting, Arnold started to investigate various other reports of UFOs. This involved both writing books and speaking about the topic for years to come. Later in the year of 1947, after many other widely publicised UFO reports, and before the name Project Blue Book was used, public UFO studies were first initiated under the name Project Saucer. The project was named after Air Force General Nathan Farragut Twining, who was the head of the Air Technical Service Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The goal of Project Saucer was to collect, evaluate and distribute within the government all information relating to UFO sightings on the premise that they might represent a threat to national security. The name Project Saucer was then renamed Project Sign. This name changed at the time was initiated specifically at the request of General Twining. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio was then designated to be the home of Project Sign, and any and all subsequent official United States Air Force, or USAF for short, public investigations. Project Sign, unfortunately, was officially found to be inconclusive with regards to the cause of any UFO sightings. However, according to the US Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who became the first director of Project Blue Book, Project Sign's initial intelligence estimate, or the so-called estimate of the situation, written in the late summer of 1948, concluded that A. Flying saucers were real craft. B. They were not made by either Soviet Union or the United States. And C. Were likely extraterrestrial in origin. On the 27th of April in 1949, the US Air Force publicly released a paper which was prepared by the Intelligence Division of the Air Materiel Command at Wright-Patterson Command at Wright-Patterson Airfield in Ohio. The paper stated that while some UFOs appear to represent actual aircraft, there was not enough data to determine their origin. Also, almost all cases were explained by ordinary causes, but the report still recommended a continuation of the investigations on all sightings. Project Sign was first asserted in the 1956 book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, by retired Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. In his book, he also claimed that Project Sign had produced an estimate of the situation, which endorsed an interplanetary explanation for UFOs. However, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Hoyt Vandenberg, shut down Project Sign due to lack of any physical proof. No copy of this document or any other corroboration of Edward J. Ruppelt's claim has been produced, and Popular Mechanics called the report probably more mythological than real. On an interesting side note, Popular Mechanics is a popular science and technology magazine which was founded in 1902 by Henry Haven Windsor, featuring automotive, home, outdoor, electronics, science, do-it-yourself and technology topics, military topics, aviation and transportation of all types, in which space tools and gadgets are commonly featured, and surprisingly, it is still being published today. So, up next, Project Grudge, which was a short-lived enterprise that succeeded Project Sign in the February of 1949 by the US Air Force to investigate unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. It was intended to alleviate public anxiety over UFOs and persuade the public that UFOs constituted nothing unusual or extraordinary. UFO sightings were explained away as conventional aircraft, planets, meteors, optical illusions, solar reflections, large hailstones, and the good old favourite, the weather balloon. Project officials recommended that the project be reduced in scope because of the very existence of Air Force official interest, which encouraged people to believe in UFOs and contribute to a war hysteria atmosphere. In the August of 1949, Project Grudge issued its only formal report. The report's conclusions were:
there is no evidence that objects reported upon are the result of an advanced scientific foreign development, and therefore they constitute no direct threat to national security. In view of this, it is recommended that the investigation and study of reports of UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, be reduced in scope. B. All evidence and analysis indicate that reports of unidentified flying objects are the direct result of misinterpretation of various conventional objects, 2. A mild form of mass hysteria and war nerves, 3. Individuals who fabricate such reports to perpetrate a hoax or to seek publicity, and 4. Psychopathological persons. The recommendations section suggested that Air Force personnel receive some basic instruction in astronomical phenomena.
An article by Sidney Chalette appeared in 2 consecutive issues of the Saturday Evening Post in 1949 and supported Project Grudge's assessment that UFO reports could be explained by mundane phenomena and that hoaxes and crackpots played a prominent role in popularising UFOs. Astronomer and ufologist J. Allen Hynek criticised Project Grudge, claiming that the project was, and I quote, less science and more of a public relations campaign. Project Grudge also received criticism from former intelligence officer Edward J. Ruppelt, who said he was, and I quote, I am convinced of the alien nature of UFOs and how I've seen the military and the US government trying to discredit the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Hynek and Ruppelt both felt that the project was as far from an objective scientific examination of the phenomena as one could get. So, on the 27th of December 1949, the Air Force announced that Project Grudge was to be terminated. However, it did continue in some minimal capacity until late 1951. After a short break, we'll take a look at how Project Grudge became Project Blue Book.
This show is brought to you by courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times and over 16s only, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could, and has, taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. Why not pay them a visit to see for yourself? Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective discounts. And why not download the app, available on both iOS and Android, for only £3.99 to keep you up to date with what's coming up at the centre.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 and was the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Now, over 23 years old, hundreds of ghost hunts join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experience worth remembering. If you have never been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them on an event to see what it's all about? Fright Nights currently operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues with their teams of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. You are guaranteed a quality night of ghost hunting unequalled by any other company. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering discounts and exclusive event invitations. And they can host private events for you and your friends, clubs or work colleagues. They have also expanded their new Friends of Fright Nights pages with many more new things to come. So why not book early with a small deposit so you don't miss out? The balance is due 28 days prior to the event. Contact them on 07852 998 628 or email at frightnightsevents@gmail.com. That's frightnightsevents@gmail.com. Or why not visit their website www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn a lot more about them and the opportunities they have available. You can also visit their many social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they have been to and what's coming up in the future. They look forward to seeing you soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
According to the former intelligence officer Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, I should say, by the end of 1951, several high-ranking, very influential United States Air Force generals were so dissatisfied with the state of the Air Force UFO investigations that by March in 1952, they actually dismantled Project Grudge and replaced it with Project Blue Book. One of these dissatisfied men was General Charles P. Cabell. Another important change came with General William Garland. Another important change came when General William Garland joined Cabell's staff. William Garland thought the UFO question deserved serious scrutiny, mainly because he himself had seen a UFO. The new name, Project Blue Book, was selected as it referred to the blue booklets that were used for testing at both colleges and universities. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt said that the name was inspired by the close attention that high-ranking officers were given the new project. It felt as if the study of UFOs was as important as a final college exam. Project Blue Book was also upgraded in status from Project Grudge, with the creation of the Aerial Phenomenon Branch. On another interesting side note, the Aerial Phenomenon Branch is an office within the United States offices of the Secretary of Defense that investigates unidentified flying objects and other phenomena in the air, sea, in space or on land. It is sometimes referred to as unidentified aerial phenomena or unidentified anomalous phenomena, or for short, UAP. That's definitely easy to remember. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt was the first head of the project. He was an experienced airman, having been decorated for his efforts with the Army Air Corps during World War II, and having afterwards studied and earned an aeronautics degree. He officially coined the term unidentified flying object to replace the many other terms the military had previously used. Captain Ruppelt felt that the term unidentified flying object was a more neutral, accurate term. Ruppelt resigned from the Air Force some years later and wrote a book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, which described the study of UFOs by the United States Air Force from 1947 to 1955. An American scientist called Michael D. Swords wrote that, and I quote, "Ruppelt would lead the last genuine effort to analyze UFOs." Ruppelt implemented a number of changes. The first thing he did was streamline the manner in which UFOs were reported to military officials, partly in the hopes of alleviating the stigma and ridicule associated with UFO witnesses. Ruppelt also ordered the development of a standardized questionnaire for UFO witnesses, hoping to uncover data that could be subject to statistical analysis. He also commissioned a private non-profit science and technology development company called the Battelle Memorial Institute to create the questionnaire and then computerize the data. Using case reports and the now computerized data, the Battelle Memorial Institute then conducted a massive scientific and statistical study of all the Air Force UFO cases which were reported in 1954 and called it Project Blue Book Special Report number 14. Knowing that factionalism had harmed the progress of Project Sign, Ruppelt did his best to avoid the kinds of open-ended speculation which had led to Sign's personnel being split among advocates and critics of the extraterrestrial hypothesis. American author Michael Hall wrote, and I quote, "Ruppelt not only took this job seriously, he expected his staff to do so as well. If anyone under him either became too skeptical or too convinced of one particular theory, they soon found themselves thrown off the project." In Hall's book, he also reports that Captain Edward J. Ruppelt fired 3 personnel very early on in the project because they were either too pro or too con regarding the UFO phenomena. Ruppelt also sought the advice of many scientists and experts and issued regular press releases, along with any classified monthly reports for military intelligence. Each US Air Force base had a Blue Book officer to collect the UFO reports and forward them to the captain. During most of Ruppelt's tenure, he and his team were authorized to interview any and all military personnel who witnessed any UFOs and were not required to follow any chain of command. This unprecedented authority helped to underline the seriousness of Project Blue Book's investigations. Under Ruppelt's direction, Blue Book investigated a number of well-known UFO cases, including the Lubbock Lights. On another interesting side note, the Lubbock Lights were an unusual formation of lights that was seen over the city of Lubbock, Texas in August and September of 1951. The Lubbock Lights incident received national publicity in the United States as a UFO sighting. I might actually do a program on that one. According to author, ufologist and astronomer Jackie Valley, Ruppelt started the trend largely followed by the later Project Blue Book investigations of not giving enough serious consideration to numerous reports of UFO landings and interactions with reported UFO witnesses. Astronomer J. Allen Hynek became the scientific consultant for Project Blue Book. He had previously been involved with both Project Sign and Project Grudge. He was also a pronounced skeptic when he started out, but said that his feelings changed to a more wavering skepticism during his research after encountering a minority of UFO reports that he thought were unexplainable. Hynek worked for Project Blue Book right up until its termination, and initially created the categorization which has been extended and is now known today as Close Encounters. In ufology, a close encounter is officially classed as an event in which a person witnesses an unidentified flying object, or UFO. The terminology and system of classification behind it were first suggested in astronomer and UFO researcher J. Allen Hynek's 1972 book, The UFO Experience, A Scientific Inquiry. When Hynek devised the original classification for UFO sightings, they were arranged in accordance to increasing proximity. Close Encounters of the First Kind, CE1. This refers to any visual sightings of an unidentified flying object seemingly less than 500 feet away that shows an appreciable angular extension and considerable detail. Close Encounters of the Second Kind, CE2. This refers to a UFO event in which a physical effect is alleged. This can be an interference in the functioning of a vehicle or electronics device, animals reacting, a psychological effect such as paralysis or heat and discomfort in the witness, or some physical trace-like impressions in the ground such as scorched or otherwise affected vegetation or a chemical trace. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, CE3. This refers to a UFO encounter in which an animated entity is present. These are the ones that include humanoids, robots, and humans who seem to be occupants or pilots of a UFO. Categories beyond Hynek's original three have since been added by others, but have not gained the same universal acceptance, mainly because they lack scientific rigour or that J. Allen Hynek aimed to bring to the field of ufology. Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, CE4. A close encounter of the fourth kind is an event in which a human is abducted by a UFO or its occupants. This type was not included in Hynek's original Close Encounters scale. Hynek's former associate, author, ufologist and astronomer Jackie Valley argued in the Journal of Scientific Exploration that the fourth kind should refer to, and I quote, cases where witnesses experienced a transformation of their sense of reality, and to also include that non-abduction cases where absurd hallucinatory or dreamlike events are associated with UFO encounters. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, CE5. A close encounter of the fifth kind refers to a human-initiated contact with extraterrestrial life forms or advanced interstellar civilizations, claiming direct communication between aliens and humans. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, CE5, was first coined by American ufologist Stephen M. Greer. In a CE5 event, individuals or groups use specific protocols to establish communication or interaction with extraterrestrial beings. These protocols primarily involve the use of contact meditation and use of sounds or signals. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, CE5, are also referred to as a human-initiated close encounter. On another interesting side note, Stephen M. Greer is an American ufologist who founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and the Disclosure Project, which seeks to disclose of alleged classified UFO information. Captain Edward J. Ruppelt left Blue Book in February 1953 for a temporary reassignment job. He returned a few months later to find out that his staff had been reduced from more than 10 down to 2 subordinates. Frustrated, Ruppelt suggested that an Air Defence Command Unit, the 4602 Air Intelligence Service Squadron, be charged with any UFO investigations. In July 1952, after a build-up of hundreds of sightings over the previous few months, a series of radar detections and visual sightings were observed near the National Airport in Washington, D.C. This site later became known as the Washington Flap, the Washington National Airport sightings, or the invasion of Washington. UFO historian Curtis Peebles called the incident, and I quote, "The climax of the 1952 UFO flap. Never before or after did Project Blue Book and the Air Force undergo such a tidal wave of UFO reports." After much publicity, these sightings led to the Central Intelligence Agency to establish a panel of scientists called the Robertson Panel, which was headed by the physicist of the California Institute of Technology, H.P. Robertson. This panel would include various physicists, meteorologists and engineers, and just one astronomer, namely J. Allen Hynek. The panel was a scientific committee which met in January 1953 to review the US Air Force investigations into unidentified flying objects and to review Project Blue Book. Ruppelt, Hynek and others presented the best evidence, including movie footage, which had been collected by Blue Book. After spending 12 hours reviewing 6 years of data, the Robertson panel concluded that most UFO reports had prosaic explanations and with further investigation could be explained, which they then felt wasn't worth the effort. In their final report, they stressed that low-grade, unverifiable UFO reports were actually overloading intelligence channels, with the risk of missing a genuine conventional threat to the US. Therefore, they recommended that the Air Force de-emphasize the subject of UFOs and embark on a debunking campaign to lessen public interest. They suggested debunkery through a mass media, including Walt Disney Productions, and using psychologists, astronomers and celebrities to ridicule the phenomena and to put forward a more prosaic explanation. Furthermore, civilian UFO groups should be closely watched because of their potentially great influence on mass thinking. The apparent irresponsibility and the possible use of such groups for subversive purposes should be kept in mind. Sorry about that, my phone just went off. I do apologise. Oh, you can tell it's live, can't you? Anyway, where was I? Sorry, yes. In the conclusion of many researchers that the Robertson panel was recommending controlling public opinion through a programme of official propaganda and spying, they also believe that recommendations help shape Air Force policy regarding UFO study, not only immediately afterwards, but also into the present day. In December 1953, Joint Army-Navy Air Force Regulation number 146 made it a crime for military personnel to discuss classified UFO reports with unauthorised persons. Violators faced up to 2 years in prison and or fines up to $10,000. As an immediate consequence of the Robertson panel recommendations in February 1953, the Air Force issued Regulation 200/2, ordering airbase officers to publicly discuss UFO incidents only if they were judged to have been solved, and to classify all the unsolved cases to keep them out of the public eye. And in the same month, investigative duties started to be taken on by the newly formed 4602 Air Intelligence Squadron, AISS, of the Air Defence Command. The 4602 AISS was assigned the task of investigating only the most important UFO cases with intelligence or national security implications. These cases were deliberately siphoned away from Project Blue Book, leaving Blue Book to just deal with the more trivial reports. Blue Book could only discuss UFO cases with the media if they were regarded as having a conventional explanation. If they were unidentified, the media was to be told that the situation was being analysed. They were also ordered to reduce the number of unidentified flying objects to a minimum, so basically lie to the general population. All this work was done secretly. The public face of Project Blue Book continued to be the official Air Force investigation of UFOs, but the reality was that it had essentially been reduced to doing very few serious investigations, and it had become almost solely a public relations outfit with a debunking mandate. To give you one example, by the end of 1956, the number of cases listed as unsolved had dipped barely to 0.4%. This was a dramatic drop from the 20%, 30% only a few years earlier. In 1966, a string of UFO sightings in Massachusetts and New Hampshire provoked a congressional hearing by the House Committee on Armed Services. According to the attachments to the hearing, the Air Force had at first stated that the sightings were the result of a training exercise that was happening in the area. But NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, reported that there was no record of a plane flying at the time the sightings occurred. Another report alleged that the UFO was actually a flying billboard when advertising gasoline. Raymond Fowler of NICAP added his own interviews with the locals, who saw Air Force officers confiscate newspapers with the story of UFOs and telling them not to report what they had seen. Two police officers who had witnessed the UFOs, Eugene Bertrand and David Hunt, wrote a letter to the Major Quintanilla. Is it Quintanilla? Quintanilla. My apologies, whoever you are, stating that they felt their reputations had been destroyed by the Air Force. They wrote, and I quote, "It was impossible to mistake what we saw for any kind of military operation, regardless of the altitude," adding that there was no way it could have been a balloon or a helicopter. According to the Secretary of the Air Force, Harold Brown, Project Blue Book consisted of 3 steps: investigation, analysis, and the distribution of information gathered to any interested parties. After Harold Brown gave permission, the press was invited into the hearing. By the time of the hearing, Project Blue Book had identified and explained 95% of the reported UFO sightings. None of these were found to be extraterrestrial or a threat to national security. Brown himself proclaimed, and I quote, "I know of no one of scientific standing or executive standing with a detailed knowledge of this in our organization who believes that they came from extraterrestrial sources." J. Allen Hynek, a science consultant to Project Blue Book, suggested that in an unedited statement that, and I quote, "civilian panel or psychological or physical or social scientists should be formed for the express purpose of determining whether a major problem really exists in regards to UFOs." Hynek also remarked that he has, and I quote, "not seen any evidence to confirm extraterrestrials, nor do I know of any competent scientist who has, or who believes that any kind of extraterrestrial intelligence is involved." Criticism of Blue Book continued to grow throughout the mid-1960s. The National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or NICAP's membership ballooned to about 15,000, and the group charged the US government with a cover-up of UFO evidence. In the end, the Condon Committee suggested that there was nothing extraordinary about UFOs, and while it left a minority of cases unexplained, the report also argued that further research would not be likely to yield significant results. In response to the Condon Committee's conclusions, the Secretary of the Air Force, Robert C. Siemens, Jr., announced that Blue Book would soon be closed because, he said, and I quote, "Further reading, further funding cannot be justified either on the grounds of national security or in the interest of science." The last publicly acknowledged day of Project Blue Book operations was on the 17th of December 1969. However, researcher Brad Sparks, citing research from May 1970 issue of NICAP's UFO Investigator, reports that the last day of Blue Book activity was actually on the 30th of January 1970. According to Sparks, Air Force officials wanted to keep the Air Force's reaction to the UFO problem from overlapping into a 4th decade, and thus altered the date of Project Blue Book's closure in official lines, or official files. Blue Book's files were then sent to the Air Force archives at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. Major David Shear was to later claim that Maxwell was chosen because it was accessible yet not too inviting. Ultimately, Project Blue Book stated that UFO sightings were generated as a result of a mild form of mass hysteria, b, individuals who fabricate such reports to perpetrate a hoax or seek publicity, c, psychopathological persons, or d, misidentifications of various conventional objects. The theme of Project Blue Book has been used in many TV shows, so let's have a look at a couple. Twin Peaks. Project Blue Book played a major role in the second season of the 1990s TV series Twin Peaks. Major Garland Briggs, an Air Force officer who worked on the program, approaches protagonists Dale Cooper and reveals that Cooper's name turned up in an otherwise nonsensical radio transmission intercepted by the Air Force, which inexplicably originated from the woods surrounding the town of Twin Peaks. As the season progresses, it is revealed that the source of the transmission is the transdimensional realm of the Black Lodge, inhabited by beings which feed on human emotions of pain and suffering. It eventually comes out that Briggs worked with Cooper's rival, corrupt FBI agent Wyndham Earle, on Project Blue Book, and that the two men apparently uncovered evidence of the Lodge during the course of their work. Galactica, 1980. Every episode of the original Battlestar Galactica spin-off series, Galactica 1980, ended with a short statement about the US Air Force's 1969 Project Blue Book findings, that UFOs are not proven to exist and are not a threat to national security. And of course, Project Blue Book. The series revolves around the real-life Project Blue Book, a secret series of investigations into supposed UFO encounters and unexplained phenomena undertaken by the United States Air Force and skeptical astrophysicist, professor and eventual ufologist Dr. J. Allen Hynek in the 1950s and 1960s. With his partner, Air Force veteran Captain Michael Quinn, they investigate sightings across the US, with Dr. Hynek discovering that not everything can be explained by science. In April 2003, the USAF publicly indicated that at the time there were no immediate plans to re-establish any official government UFO study programs. However, in December 2017, it was disclosed that a new secret UFO study titled the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or the AATIP, was founded around $22 million from 2007 to 2012.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. Next time, we are going to look at Japan Airlines Flight 1628 UFO incident. Japan Airlines Cargo Flight 1628 was a UFO incident that occurred on the 17th of November in 1986, involving a Japanese Boeing 747-200F cargo aircraft. The aircraft was en route from Paris to Narita International Airport near Tokyo. On the Reykjavik to Anchorage section of the flight, at 1711 over eastern Alaska, the crew first witnessed two unidentified objects to their left. When closest, the aircraft's cabin was lit up by the captain, and the captain could feel their heat on his face. These two craft departed before a third, much larger, disc-shaped object started trailing them. The sighting lasted 50 minutes and ended in the vicinity of Denali.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes and Denise Pooler, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, and a big thanks to everyone at Hinckley Community Radio. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.